Whatever you're dissatisfied with in your life will come out in your creations. And if you are judging too much or if you're insecure, I think as an artist, we should just let ourselves be run by the requirements of our art. And if it requires a lot of work, I guess we should be happy to be the slave of our art.
Welcome to the Passionate Painter Podcast. I'm your host, Caroline Italia Carlson. Whether your art is a full-time career or your side gig, if you are passionate about creating art, this podcast is for you. Don't worry about taking notes. I'll do that for you. And you can find them at passionatepainterpodcast.com. I'm really happy to bring you an interview with Cuban painter Cesar Santos. I have been absolutely infatuated with Cesar's work since I first laid eyes on it, and it was such a privilege to have the time to speak with him on the show. Cesar's remarkably warm and good-natured, and at the same time very down-to-earth. I think you'll find this interview both helpful and inspiring. Cesar Santos' art education is worldly, and his paintings reflect a well-traveled mind. He studied at the Miami-Dade College, where he earned his Associate in Arts degree in 2003. He then attended the New World School of Arts. Before graduating with a Bachelor of Fine Arts, he left to study abroad and amplify his understanding of art. In 2006, he completed the Angel Academy of Art in Florence. Santos's work reflects both classical and modern interpretations, juxtaposed within one painting. His influences range from the Renaissance to the masters of the 19th century to contemporary artists living today. With superb technique, he infuses a harmony between the natural and the conceptual to create works that are provocative and dramatic. Santos has had numerous solo exhibitions nationwide, including Miami, New York City, and now Los Angeles. He's received numerous accolades, including first place in a Metropolitan Museum of Art competition and the 2013 Miami-Dade College Hall of Fame Award in Visual Arts. His work has been exhibited throughout the United States, Europe, Latin America, and Asia, including the Museum of Contemporary Art in Sicily, Italy, the Beijing Museum in China, Villa Bardini Museum in Florence, Italy, and the National Gallery in Costa Rica. Cesar, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm always looking forward to talking about art, so that's great.
Yes. So tell me about the development of your career and how you became a world-famous painter.
Oh, man. I don't even know how everything is happening. It's weird because I feel as if I was my first day of school, When I started studying art officially, kind of formally, was here in the States. I was born in Cuba, and my uncle, he's a painter, so he had a background in art, and he saw that I loved drawing and painting, and he encouraged it. But it was kind of just a game playing around. But here I had to decide, and while entering high school, if I was going to take it seriously, because I was going to not do any sports or anything else, and I was going to do extra classes on art. So that's when I decided it. To just be an artist. But I still don't even know what it is, honestly. Like, to tell you the truth, I mean, thanks to social media, people can find out about your journey and they kind of see it and respond to it. And that makes the whole thing easier. But there's no beginning and no end to the feeling I have and the energy that runs me as an artist.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I lose time when I paint. So it's just a never-ending fascination and love affair with painting and drawing and all of art.
Yeah, I guess we are run. I guess some people are just born with that spirit to be an artist and to express ourselves in that way that is so strange. And I guess you have to either surrender to it and do what it requires you to do, or you're going to pay the consequences by being frustrated your whole life doing something else, So I'm glad that I found it and early on, and I was encouraged and supported by my parents, and I was able to discover it and develop it from an early age. And that way I can accumulate, more things towards just one vision than if I hear artists that didn't have the support or the opportunity early on and they got distracted and then they want to catch it later on in life and it's harder like that. But I guess as long as you're expressing it, then that spirit is fulfilled. And yeah, and I think that's the goal.
And you're a world traveler, so let's talk about that for a minute, because not everybody has the opportunity necessarily to head off to Italy to study. And that's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for education and exposure to, Renaissance art and all of art history from Europe and different masters. How did you end up traveling so much?
Well, I think in my case, it was very difficult. It was something I required. I mean, it was something that my art was asking me to do. So I kind of told my parents that I needed the skill set that was being taught in this school. And it was over there in Italy. So we started saving and preparing a year ahead. And then my parents invested and sold the house and they supported me with that. So I'm lucky to have great parents that can push me to do what I love. So that's the first thing. But I don't think that doing that was the key or the answer, because I understand every artist is in a different situation. Maybe there are artists with a lot of money or family with support, and they still don't find themselves, even if they go to the best place in the world that they wanted to go to study art. And some artists cannot travel and they end up being great at what they do with the resources they had locally. So I do believe in the individual situation and to take that as positive as possible and not think that just because you don't have an opportunity that requires money is what's going to kill your spirit as an artist or anything like that. That's a good excuse though, but I don't think it's real. I think we have everything we need. And it's all a matter of finding ways to do it. And some people can push further and some can't. But I think at the end of the day, art is for the individual to express within their possibility.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the drive to create and to be consistent in showing up in your studio is the most important factor there, whether or not you can travel.
Yes.
So in your artist statement, you say, at a time of extreme intercommunication, I feel a crisis in the individual as an organism, losing touch with the transcendent. The pages of my sketchbook offer a compensatory adjustment to the limitations of our awareness. Please elaborate.
Yes, well, I feel that before the art that I studied, I basically study art from different time periods. And I feel that before we were, as individuals, we were more connected to one branch, like to a god or to a cultural movement, something bigger. So that way we were able to not be ashamed of expressing things for them or within that realm that is bigger than you as an individual, as a mere painter. And so I feel that that's a crisis in the sense of we're being isolated. And we need to get in touch with that bigger aspect that runs us as artists. And that is what gives us that peace of mind to be able to express and not being afraid of connecting to that, because I mean, my case, I studied in a contemporary school and it was all about my problems. All the artists were expressing their point of views and in a very drastic way, even before developing as a skillful artist. And I think that can bring a lot of frustration and confusion because then you don't know what you're doing. You're kind of doing art for yourself, and then you realize how you probably are not worth all that effort. And then the art comes out reflecting a little bit of that emptiness. And I think a lot of that is reflected in a lot of the contemporary art systems that we have today, in different than before, which we had a bigger kind of vision. So that's what I meant by that. Can you read the second part with the sketchbook connection so I can connect it there?
Yeah, sure. You mentioned the pages of my sketchbook offer a compensatory adjustment to the limitations of our awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So basically, in my case, the sketchbook was something I always had with me, and is that connection to that energy that I have to express. So the moment I touch the sketchbook, I'm having that is the medium. That is the form that connects it and lets me be free because I don't have to share with a specific, individual about what I'm thinking, so I can make errors. So it's a liberating kind of feeling to work in the sketchbook. So that's probably what it is.
Do you still carry or use your sketchbook?
Everywhere I go, I take it, I sketch. I just had a show with the pages of one of my sketchbooks, but mostly my sketchbooks are just, for kind of ideas and thoughts and practice and skills. Yeah.
What medium do you use with that? Is it charcoal? Is it pencils?
Well, in the sketchbook, I paint with oils.
Wow.
Yeah, I prepare gesso, put gesso on the page, on the paper page. And yeah, I can paint with oils there, or gouache, or I can use also charcoal or pencil. I don't even pen. I don't mind the medium. It's more about how it comes out with what I'm envisioning. And also it's useful because I could go to a museum with a sketchbook and take notes, compare colors, compare values. And that way I can have a closer connection with the masters that I admire when I'm in the studio too, because then that same sketchbook that was next to a Caravaggio is now next to my piece, and I'm comparing. And I just mentioned Caravaggio, but it could be anybody.
I do see a strong connection with Caravaggio in many of your works, though, with the lighting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little dramatic lighting, yeah.
Very nice, yes. Now, I've never actually set up with oils within a museum. Have you done oils in a gallery or museum?
No, I haven't. But the way I do it is that I paint in the studio, and then I go to the museum and compare and write notes. So it's all about a memory exercise. I go back and readjust the colors as I saw them, and then go back to the museum and compare. But I never paint inside the museum.
Yes.
Other than maybe with markers or something like that.
Yeah, I can just see something flying through the air, and the next thing you know, they're hauling me away with the police,
No, for sure. And the process to get the permission is so...
I'm sure.
My God.
I'm sure. Now, is getting back in touch with the transcendent part of what you are aiming for with your Syncretism series?
That Syncretism series was I think it was one of my earliest series. And that's when I was exploring that conflict between the contemporary mindset and the classical mindset. So I was creating these two worlds to play together and bring them together in one conversation. But it was a little bit naive because I was using a lot of imagery from other artists, and I wasn't really sure what I was doing that much. I was just having fun with different styles. I love studying art, and I love art history. And then what I do is I started just mixing stuff up. But I never think too much. I read once from Carl Jung that the less you impose yourself, your ego, and your personal experiences into your art, the better it is for the art, because the art is a spirit that goes beyond ourselves. It's something that existed for many humans to feel. And he mentions that the more you surrender to it and the more you do what it asks you to do, the better it is. So in that sense, I'm not I don't think too much before doing. If I get a feeling of something I should do, I just go and develop it and don't mind the feedback or criticism that much.
I think that's a good approach. I got to laugh, though. You're quoting Carl Jung in the same sentence. You're saying you don't think too much, so...
Well, no, before art, before paint. No, I do think. No, yes, that's
I
funny.
I know. I think that's very funny.
Yeah, that's funny. You can't be there. But no, I meant before painting, I'm
yes.
I kind of prepare my skills, and that's why I study so much, so that when it comes out, I want it to come out as spontaneous as possible.
I agree with that. I like to, when I paint, really it's more of my soul in its native environment, and I just kind of go off and I do my thing, and I don't want to be so mechanical and thinking every move I make when I'm painting.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because then that reflects it. If for some reason you cannot beat it, you cannot fake it, it will show.
That's right. Now, do you use a particular medium? Do you varnish?
Yes, I do. I paint in oils, basically. So first I do a drawing most of the time because I love drawing, and also it gives me an easier way when I think about values or color. Then I don't have to think that much about the structure and the proportions because I solve that with drawing. And after the charcoal drawing, I fix it, I spray it, and I start painting with oils on top of that. And my medium is basically linseed oil. And in the early stages, I mix it with odorless mineral spirits, and that's it. And as I advance, I just use more of the pure linseed oil cold press and no mineral spirits. And that's it. I'm grinding my own paint now.
You are?
Yes, yes.
How difficult is that?
Well, I never had a chance to do it when I was studying. For some reason, some students tell me that that was a basic stuff they did at the beginning of their careers when they studied classical art or something along those lines, like traditional art. But I never got to do it. So one day I'm looking for a red, and someone recommended it. Someone said, just do it, try to do it. And I just bought. I was using the four pigments where it's white, black, yellow, and red. And that's yellow ochre, and the red at that time was cadmium red, but now I'm using vermilion.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel the consistency of it now. Like the moment the powder gets mixed into the oil and I see the consistency and then I get to paint with it, the way it blends, I think it's superior to the brands.
Yeah, I've heard that. Now, do you work from photographs often?
Yes, a lot. And that's been the hardest part because I do love painting from life, but it's limiting. It's so limiting sometimes. So my task in my career was to learn how to work from life so much that I put my brain into interpreting what is in front of me. And when I look at a photograph, I try to see through it as if it was three-dimensional. So I'm feeling the forms and I'm feeling the edges and I'm feeling the stuff that don't show up in the photo. I don't become just like I just don't copy it in the sense of just looking at it and transferring,
Yes.
So that helps. That helps to take out that photographic look at the end.
Yes, and I'm finding that I'm very much enjoying painting from my laptop in such a way that I'm not looking at something that's already been flattened into a printed photograph, but there's light behind it, and it's helping me to translate more easily.
Yes, totally. Oh, yeah. The photograph in printed form, I haven't used since I was in college, I think. Yeah, I think that's the way.
So you do the same thing?
Yes. I have a big screen TV and I connect my computer there and I adjust the values and I use Photoshop too so I can play with contrast and play with saturation.
Yes, the Adobe suite is very helpful. And I've used Photoshop to compose as well. Certain compositions I'll do ahead of time in Photoshop where I'll combine elements that weren't necessarily together or they're fanciful. So I'm making something entirely new.
Yes. No, yeah, all those tools, Photoshop, the camera, all that we need to use.
I agree.
I think if as a system, if you require it, you should use it. I mean, if your personal system asks you to not do it, then I don't think you should do it. Like it's one of those things that the artist has to be the one deciding. But now there's a lot of confusion because a lot of the leaders and teachers encourage their students to do certain things with that in terms of that, and then they feel bad if they use it or, that's bad, I think, for the artist.
I've got to tell you, I felt this way when I learned to use an airbrush. And now that I'm using digital programs and computer technology it's not to make the art, although a lot of artists do create art digitally these days, but using photographs or reference, etc. I think if Da Vinci had an iPhone, he would have used it.
Yeah, probably. And maybe, yeah, and if he did it, maybe Raphael would. Who knows which one? But I'm sure we are using it, so of course, yeah.
Yeah, you can't say he would say, no, I want to tough it. I mean, he was a technology person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was imagining things like the helicopter that had yet to be created, that were in his sketchbooks.
Well, if you think about it, artists belong to their generation, and we have to use whatever we have available to express that need that either contradicts the system that we are living in and propose something new, or protest against it, or, there are different aspects of being an artist and different directions. So it depends on what you want to accomplish. But I think we have to belong to our time, and it's ridiculous to not use something just because it's new or old or something like that,
That's right. Now, you have some paintings that have more than one model in them. So in those cases, do you use live models and do you pose them all at the same time for lighting, etc., or do you work from different references in that case?
Yes, in the case of my models, I'm always taking my photos. I always arrange them. I put them in the studio, I light them up, or I'm in a outside and but I'm what I mean is that I'm not taking Google Images to paint. And that's a question that normally I don't think I had to say it, but a lot of people do, I guess. So I just want to clarify that. And then, yes, I do arrange it, take pictures, and then I can combine them through Photoshop, or maybe no, maybe they came out good together in the picture. So it depends on the situation and on the idea that I want to develop. Yeah.
Sure. And really where I was going with more that it looks like you do still, paint from models sometimes. In other words, you're obviously referencing what you paint. It's accurate, it's anatomically correct. So my thought was, do you ever pose 6 people at a studio and make them all hold still, as some artists still do?
Yes, I have done that. And I do, well, now when I paint from life, I do it more as an exercise.
Okay.
So that I can kind of train myself to keep looking and not falling into the photo trap. but yeah, but I mean, sometimes when I do multiple figures, I don't have them in front of me like when as I'm painting. It's normally just for a photo, so they don't have to hold the pose that long.
Yes. Now, what would you say is the most effective route to launching a successful art career? Would you say it has to do with getting into galleries, or hiring an agent, or going it alone with art fairs, or winning competitions?
I believe the person has to kind of decide what they need if they're honest with themselves. I think the worst thing is to have taboos or feel insecure about using any of the things available to us. In my case, I knew that the first thing I had to do is save money. So the first sale or the first income, I would hold it as much as possible so that it can last me as much as possible. So I just learned quickly how important art is attached to your lifestyle, and it can suffer or benefit from it according to what you do to yourself, pretty much. So I think if you're an outgoing, how do you say, if you have a personality that doesn't mind going and approaching dealers and talking to people, then you should try that, because I think everybody's knows what they need. If you're shy and don't talk, or you're bad at presenting yourself, then it's true. Yeah, you might need someone to help you out communicating that. But at the end of the day, I believe if you are communicating something that connects with other people, I believe that will inevitably succeed, because it's a connection. Art is something for the people, regardless of if people say don't do it for the people. Yes, of course, you don't do it for the people, but the moment you do it, people will connect to it if it has meaning. Either you're doing it for the museum staff or the curators or your friend or your, like your local market. It doesn't matter. Art has many ways to be expressed, but I do believe that the individual has to be the one looking out for that. And sometimes they forget about it.
Yes. Now, what was your first real break into the industry where you were selling paintings? How did you make that transition?
Okay, before I went to Italy to study art, I was in college. So I did 4 years of college. And during that time, I met some people that bought my art for like $200, $300. I don't know them anymore. I mean, I lost contact with them. But I was able to just one-to-one kind of make the transaction of purchasing and doing work. But I don't consider that serious, because that was kind of like in the moment type of situation. But once I graduated from Italy and I came back, I asked my parents, because I was living with them when I came back, and I asked them to give me 2 months to set up a series of works so that I can present it to the galleries. And I did that. I set up still lifes, and I did a bunch of still lifes that I thought were kind of creative and fun. And as soon as I had like 7 or 8 of them, I took it. I don't remember the amount actually, but I don't remember. It was a whole series. And I took it to the best gallery I thought of in Miami. And that was after testing it with people. Like I would show it to artists, I would take it in my car and show it in shows outside, maybe someone. And not like the gallery owners or anything, just people to see how they would react to it. If they liked it, if they didn't, what would they say about it? And then once I felt prepared, I went and approached the gallery and I said, this is what it is. I mean, it wasn't I always look for a way to communicate at a very balanced level, because if you approach a gallery and they're already telling you that they're busy and you keep insisting, that's a bad introduction. So I try to avoid the bad, I try to have the best first impression type of thing.
Yes, I was just going to ask, do you think that should be done in person then? Or
I don't know. I think so. I mean, in my case, I like doing that and I like being rejected. If they don't like it, I want them to tell me my face. And if they do, so I can see them, it's very tough to send an email and not know where it went, or if an assistant was the one deleting it or loving, that's so weird. I wouldn't be able to sleep until they respond. So I'd rather just get it over with. So I would just go every gallery I got into. I just went there and talked to them in person.
I love that. You just said to me, I like being rejected. And you know what? That is probably the most valuable advice I've been told on the show, because if we could all think in those terms of, now I have another piece of information, I know where I don't fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the key is to not take it personal. Because it's your art. It's kind of something that came out from you. It's not something that is really, really you. I mean, nobody knows what we are, but definitely the art is something that comes out. And then if you present that to someone and they don't know how to make use of it or make money with it, then they can tell you right away. So it all depends on that. So yeah, I don't think people should take it personal. Like, oh my God, if they say they don't like it, it's not worth it. That's a personality maybe problem.
Yeah. So then, do you ever compare yourself to other artists? And what advice do you have on that?
I used to do that more when I was learning more, like at the beginning of my skills being developed. I used to look at how people solve problems and be like, oh my God, he did that so good. How can I do that? And yes, I was a little bit competitive in that sense. I would go to competitions and compete in art and I'll do that. But not in terms of the idea, because it's hard to copy someone's idea. And if I see someone succeeding and expressing themselves good and having success and people responding to it, I just think that's good for the world. I don't see it as taking anything from me. Also, what I see is like, okay, how did he do that or she did that? And how can I do it in my own way? And that way, yes, I'm always looking around because we're, social animals. So it's good to look around always, but not to take it to that so that it becomes a personal competition or anything like that with an individual. I think we're all adding or taking away from life. And I think people who give and support life and people and have people happy or enhance that positive quality of life, I think it's good, whoever does it. So yes, I'm always looking and comparing. If I see someone a little bit better at something in terms of skills, I'm like, okay, I'm either taking a workshop with them or practicing until I solve this problem.
Yeah. I love taking workshops. I actually have your DVD, which I love.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. And speaking of the DVD then, how about teaching? Do you still teach? Are you looking to do more of that? Do you think it's helpful to a career? Do you recommend it for the purposes of solidifying your own methods?
Yeah, I love teaching. I don't know if I would. I mean, I love painting in my studio way more. So since I have only one life and I don't want to regret too many things that I have control of over, I'd rather paint most of the time and teach as little as I can. But I do need it sometimes to get out of my studio and share in person my skills and see how it works in other people too, and the way I express it to see if they got the idea and put it into practice. I do love that, but not so much that I would sacrifice my expression for that. But also a risk is that if you get too comfortable gaining money by teaching, what happens is that I think you get a little lazy, and then your art, which is so demanding, gets kind of quiet and doesn't fight anymore because you're hiding it with the other stuff. So I just think it's a little bit dangerous for younger artists to teach so quick and to spend more time, teaching than creating art. But I guess everybody does whatever they feel. But I'm just saying it in case, because I see some frustrated teachers, and I don't, that's the worst thing that you can be. So as long as I do it with my full potential, being happy, then it's all good.
Yes, I agree with that. I think there has to be a continual prioritization and making sure that you're working on the most important thing so that you don't lose sight of what your primary goals are for your career.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because when I was studying at the Angel Academy in Florence, towards the end of my last project, they were asking for people who wanted to teach a beginning student. And I kind of volunteered, put my name on the list, but they didn't accept me. So they rejected the idea. And that's what made me also not have any more funds and graduate and come back. So actually, sometimes what happens, it can be that might look like a disadvantage, can end up being a good advantage. So I always think that we should always be positive with whatever happens to us, because that might be the best thing. But maybe at that time we didn't have enough data to kind of think about it and understand how good that was, and we protested. So I learned early on to not do that, to just take what we have and just know that that's what we have and be happy with it.
I agree with you. In hindsight, I find it much easier looking back to realize the things that maybe disappointed me years ago that I just couldn't see at the time why that happened. Or I thought, well, this is meant to be, I'm supposed to do this or that. And it turned out that it put me on a different path that led me to where I needed to go. And I couldn't see at the time because I didn't have enough information yet.
Yes. I mean, and maybe if they would have gotten me, maybe my whole future would have been different, and that would be good too. But what I mean is, whatever happens, embrace it and do the best with it.
I agree. Now, what about pricing? Do you price based on your galleries and representation? Do you set your own pricing? How did you really pick up the business aspects of what you do?
That's a difficult one, because the way I did it was by kind of momentum. The moment I gave my art to the gallery dealer, then he started pricing it according to what he thought. And at the beginning it was cheaper, but then it went up. And then from there, when I went to another gallery, they asked me for the prices. I said, this is what it's being selling for. So we applied that. And sometimes what happens is that galleries sometimes want to play with the prices to go, up or down. And I wanted to keep them steady as much as possible, because for me, it's important. I produce a lot. So for me, it's important to not be the most expensive painter out there. But I just want to have a feel that it was fair, what I got for this, the value I gave through my art. And then, as long as it sells, I think that's the price. Like, the price is, as long as someone buys it, that's the price. Because it's hard to tell, it's hard to push it forcefully.
Yes, and then you have to store an inventory of paintings. As you said, you need to keep things moving because you produce a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so everybody has, I guess, different ways. Maybe if Gagosian gets me, then tomorrow my prices will be tripled. I don't know how that will work, but I guess that's what the market requires. I believe in letting that as stable as possible. And what I go wild is with the art and my experimentation and saving money. But yeah, I don't sweat it that much in terms of pricing.
Are you currently with a number of galleries at the same time?
Yes, I have Maxwell Alexander representing me on the West Coast. And here I'm working with a gallery in Miami and also in Paris. And they do move my art and they take me to fairs and shows. So yeah, it's good enough.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so what about your studio process? You said that you're very prolific. You're painting all the time. What does that look like on a practical level? How does your week or your day look when you're painting a lot like that?
Yeah, well, I get up and I just go to work pretty much. And I like painting at night. So when I get up, it's at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
Most of the time, from midday to 2 to 3. It could be crazy like that. But yeah, I spend pretty much 10, 12 hours painting, sometimes more. Sometimes I don't paint at all if I don't feel. I don't push it, but I started with a good work ethic. So that's the standard. The standard is I cannot be just wasting time. If you see me sitting around, I'm just taking a break, but I don't see it as wasting time. I see it as very important, more important than working sometimes. but I do compensate it with a lot of work and a lot of hours. And I put myself into short goals. So I said, okay, by this week, I have to have this piece done. And then I just work crazy hours. And if I do finish earlier, I give myself like a break and a bonus. And I say, okay, I have 2 days free then if I finish this before. So I do play around like that with my mind, depending on the situation I am. Certain, moments, like if I have a show or if I have traveling coming up. But I do set a clear vision of within a week or 2 weeks what I have to accomplish by then. And then I just wake up and work for it. And everything else that comes my way, I ignore it until it's time for that to be attended.
So how long does it take you to complete a painting?
It could be a week. Like a week is a good kind of average, but painting a lot. So I kind of, since my work is in indirect, meaning my work is built in layers and stages, I have to sometimes let a layer dry. So smaller work sometimes takes me the same amount of time than a bigger work because I just put less hours a day and relax the other time. So yeah, it depends, but more or less like a week, 2 weeks.
Do you work on multiple paintings at the same time?
Sometimes. It's not my preferred way to work because I do love falling in love with a piece and developing it and tasting it. And I figure that when I go to another piece in between, I kind of lose a little bit of the passion from the first one. So then I kind of feel a little bit more detached from both at the end. But if I can, I just work on one. But if sometimes it depends. Like I can change, if I feel like working on two because of something, then I do it and I can enjoy it like that too.
And how often do you paint portraits? I know that you have kind of a portrait lane and then you have your figurative lane. How do you split that up?
Did you mean portrait commissions?
Are the portraits that you show on your website and in galleries, are they from commission?
Oh, some of them are, but sometimes because I do portraits that can look like a commission, but it was just me that I liked the character. I wanted to express something, so I do it. And sometimes it's definitely obvious that it's a commission, but I do them as if everything is the same. I don't separate them. I like doing all types of works the same level. As long as I'm working and creating, I'm kind of fulfilled.
So when you do a portrait commission, do you deal directly with the buyer or does somebody handle that for you as far as pricing and working out the details and the logistics?
It can change. Most of the time, for some reason, the galleries sell more the work that I create on my own. And every time someone wants a commission, most of the time they come directly to me. But sometimes I get it from the galleries too. The gallery has a client, and then we proceed like that. I set up the rules, pay 50% in advance. When I finish it, you like it, you pay me the rest, and then I deliver the painting. That's pretty much the standard that I use.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's not refundable, right? Because if they don't like it, say, and they don't want to give you a chance to change it, you've already spent your time and your materials.
I never said that. I never expressed that to a client. I always tell them, if you don't like it, I'll give you your money back completely.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind. But so far, I haven't had anybody rejecting it, I guess. But I'll keep the painting, of course. I'll keep it.
I can't imagine you would have any rejections.
No. I mean, it could happen. I can change it up if they don't like it. Sometimes I have to play, do some touch-ups or something if they want it, but not something that they wouldn't want the painting at all. But I guess if they're in a crisis or something comes up, they cannot pay the rest or something happens, I wouldn't want to push them and not give them money. So in my case, I would just, if you don't like it, I'll give you the money back. Who cares? Yeah. I like painting anyways. For me, it was a win-win situation because I love painting.
I understand. Now, I like to give my guests the last word. You've been so gracious, and we're already coming up on time. I can't believe how fast it's gone. So I would love to give you the chance to elaborate on anything we've discussed or talk about something we haven't yet covered. Please take a moment to do that and to give our listeners some parting career advice.
I mean, the basic things will be to set up a good character for yourself as an artist, because I think that whatever you're dissatisfied with in your life will come out in your creations. And if you are judging too much, or if you're insecure or thinking I think as an artist, we should just let ourselves be run by the requirements of our art. And if it requires a lot of work, I guess we should be happy to be the slave of our art. And I think staying positive is a big one for me. And also saving money. Like, it might look weird, but having to not worry too much about the money that you need to survive while creating art is like, that's a must.
I agree with you. I'm going to jump in there and ask you, like, do your galleries license your art, your reproductions, to continue the generation of income? Do you have residual income that way, or from the DVDs, or do you recommend a second stream of income?
Yes, I believe in trying different ways to get income. Yes, with your art. In my case, I don't do prints. I don't like buying prints. I don't like it. I don't like the idea. So in my case, I know it will be profitable, but I just go by what I feel I should do. And if I don't like it, I don't sell it, kind of thing. But I do like teaching. So now, for example, I'm preparing, should come out within a month, a program online that I can teach through videos that people can just pay and download and watch. Kind of like the DVD thing, but more of a personal project. So like if I do a painting and I want to talk about how I did the drawing, then all that is on camera and very specific so people can learn from it. And I think of ways not to get more money. I mean, even though that's always good, but I also meant how to be happy with very little material stuff so that you can sit down and paint and create something that makes you extremely happy and feel successful once you feel that you're connecting to your generation or, to your society in whatever way you're expressing it. And I think as soon as that happens, then the money comes in. And I think that money should always be to the service of you developing the art. If you get too comfortable and spend money on other things, you might regret it after when moments that you don't have it. So it depends. I mean, it depends on the individual, but I see a lot of people wasting a lot of money in fancy stuff, and then they complain that they don't have money and they cannot paint, and they want to take it out from the client or raise the prices for the painting, or they cannot even give a painting for free because they're needing too much. So the moment you don't need, I think that's when you become more powerful as an artist, because all you do is give, not take.
This wraps up my interview with painter Cesar Santos. Join me next time for an interview with modern iconic painter Christina Miller. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people to find the show too. Until next time, go make something.